I was wiping down the coffee pot in the crew room when my phone buzzed with a gate change. Nothing unusual, just one of those small airline mornings where everything is slightly out of place, but still orderly. I clipped my wings on straight, tucked my hair into the same tight twist I've worn for years, and walked down the concourse with that familiar, quiet checklist running in my head. By the time I reached Gate C-18 at Chicago O'Hare, boarding was already moving. The hum of rolling bags, the soft thump of boarding passes hitting the scanner, that faint smell of jet fuel that always slips in when the door opens. I stepped onto the aircraft like I always do. Calm face, steady pace, no wasted motion. I'd been a flight attendant for a little over 9 years, long enough to see medical issues, panic attacks, turbulence that turned confident adults into silent, wide-eyed kids. Long enough to trust procedures more than luck. And that morning, I trusted the routine completely. The captain was already up front, Captain Mark Delaney. He didn't say much, but he was consistent, focused, polite, never rattled. His first officer, Eli Park, was the one who smiled quickly, like he was trying to keep the day light. "Should be a smooth one," Eli said when I handed them their paperwork. I nodded once. "I'll take smooth." At 8:40 a.m., we pushed back. Denver was the destination. A normal domestic run. 4 hours, give or take, depending on the winds. Enough time to do service, tidy the cabin, and start thinking about what I'd eat when I got off. If you'd asked me then what I remember most about those first minutes in the air, I would have said the sound. That steady engine roar when the wheels lift. The soft clicks of seatbelts. The way the cabin lights settle into that warm, dim glow once we're climbing and everyone finally exhales. It felt safe. Familiar. And then, about an hour and a half in, the chime for the cockpit rang on my handset. Not the casual call we get for coffee or a spare headset. This one had a different tone. Shorter. Sharper. When I picked up, Captain Delaney's voice came through and it didn't sound like him. "Renee," he said, "I need you up here. Now." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. I set the handset back into its cradle with careful hands. I didn't run. Running makes passengers look up. Running turns small things into big things. I walked fast, controlled, and I kept my face neutral as I moved past row after row of people watching movies, stirring coffee, leaning into the quiet comfort of cruising altitude. Halfway up the aisle, I noticed a kid in the middle section, row 16, window seat. A girl, maybe 12, traveling alone. She wasn't crying. She wasn't fidgeting. She had her backpack tucked under her legs and a paperback open on her lap, holding the pages flat like she'd done it 100 times. An unaccompanied minor tag looped around the zipper. I paused just long enough to meet her eyes. She looked up at me, then back to her book, calm as anything. I kept walking. At the cockpit door, I knocked once and waited for the unlock. When it opened, the air felt warmer in there. Not the temperature exactly, more like the space had gone tight. Captain Delaney was pale, sweat at his hairline. One hand braced on the armrest like he didn't fully trust his balance. Eli was in the other seat, staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, like he was trying to keep his eyes from moving too much. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Captain Delaney swallowed hard and said very quietly, "Something's wrong. I don't feel right." I looked from him to Eli. Eli didn't turn his head. He just said, through his teeth, "Me neither." I didn't ask why yet. I didn't react the way my body wanted to. I did what training does for you when fear tries to rise up. I lowered my voice. "Tell me exactly what you're feeling." Captain Delaney took a breath that didn't seem to help. "Nausea, dizziness, my stomach." He stopped, eyes squeezing shut for a moment. Eli finally looked at me, and I could see it in his face. That gray tone people get right before they faint. "I can't focus," he said. "It's spinning." I nodded once, like I'd heard something manageable. Then I reached for the internal crew phone and pressed the button that connects the cabin stations. My thumb hovered over it for a beat, because in my head, clear as a printed line of text, I saw something I hadn't seen yet. A thick envelope on my kitchen table, weeks later, with a federal seal on the corner. And I didn't know why that image came so sharply. I only knew I didn't like it. I pressed the call button and kept my voice steady. "Cabin crew, this is Renee up front," I said. "I need a medical professional to identify themselves immediately, and I need it quiet." Then I looked at the two men in those seats and made myself ask the next question. "Can either of you still fly the aircraft right now?" Captain Delaney didn't answer right away. Eli's hand tightened on the armrest, and the silence that followed told me more than words could. I stood there, one hand resting lightly on the cockpit doorframe, and listened to the aircraft hum along as if nothing had changed at all. Then I waited. I didn't wait for an answer to fill the silence. Silence can be useful. It gives people room to tell the truth without being pushed into it. Captain Delaney finally shook his head once. Slow. Careful. "I shouldn't be touching the controls," he said. "I can barely keep my eyes steady." Eli exhaled through his nose. "Same, I'm trying to stay upright." I acknowledged that with a nod, the way you do when you're locking something into place mentally. No reaction, no commentary. "Okay," I said. "We'll take this one step at a time." I stepped back into the cabin and closed the cockpit door behind me, not because I wanted privacy, but because panic spreads faster when people can see it forming. The aisle felt longer on the way back. The plane was smooth, cruising without effort, autopilot holding steady. A normal flight, from the outside. I picked up the interphone again. "Medical professional, please come forward, now." This time, I added something else. "If you have any flight experience, commercial, military, or private, please make yourself known." I didn't use the PA yet. I wanted to control the size of the moment. 2 call lights came on almost immediately, one near the back, one in the middle. I signaled to Jenna and Luis, both solid crew, both steady under pressure. Jenna moved aft. Luis headed mid-cabin. While they worked, I scanned the passengers the way you do when something's off. Not faces exactly, posture, breathing, hands. Most people were relaxed. A few looked curious. Nobody looked scared yet. That mattered. The first to arrive was a woman in her early 40s. Athletic build, confident walk. She introduced herself as Dr. Emily Carter, emergency medicine. I took her straight to the cockpit. She didn't ask dramatic questions. She watched, listened, checked pupils, pulse, skin temperature. The whole thing took less than 2 minutes. Then she looked at me, expression controlled but firm. "They're both acutely ill," she said quietly. "Likely food-related. Dehydration, vertigo. They're not safe to operate complex machinery." I didn't react outwardly. Inside, something settled into a colder shape. "How long before they're fully incapacitated?" I asked. She glanced at Eli, who had both hands braced now, shoulders rigid. "Minutes, maybe less." I nodded once. "Can you stabilize them?" "I can manage symptoms," she said. "I can't fix this at altitude." I thanked her and stepped back into the cabin again. Luis met me halfway up the aisle with a man in a blazer, mid-40s, confident at first glance. "I have a private pilot license," the man said quickly. "Single engine, recreational." I brought him forward anyway. You don't dismiss options until they remove themselves. In the cockpit, he stared at the panel for about 5 seconds before his shoulders dropped. This is not what I fly," he said quietly. "I wouldn't even know where to begin." That option closed itself. I thanked him, meant it, and guided him back out. By now, I could feel the timeline tightening. Not emotionally, operationally. I made the PA announcement then. Calm, measured. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical situation involving our flight crew. Everything is under control. Please remain seated. If you are a medical professional or have aviation experience, please notify a flight attendant. The word medical always gets attention. The word crew does too. I avoided anything else. As I turned from the handset, I noticed movement near row 16 again. The same girl, the unaccompanied minor. She was standing in the aisle now, waiting patiently, not pushing forward, not panicking, just waiting like someone who expected to be acknowledged. I walked toward her. "Yes?" I asked gently, already prepared to guide her back to her seat. She looked up at me, calm, serious. "I think I can help," she said. I gave her a small, automatic smile. "Sweetheart, I need you to sit down right now." "I know," she said, "but I've trained in flight simulators. My mom flies cargo. She's been teaching me since I was little." I didn't dismiss her yet. I crouched slightly so we were eye level. "What kind of aircraft?" "Boeing," she said. "Mostly the 737. That gave me pause. Not hope, just pause. I asked one question, the kind you ask when you need to sort fantasy from fact. "What does the attitude indicator show you right now?" She didn't hesitate. "Level. We're holding altitude. Autopilot's engaged." I straightened slowly. "Come with me," I said, not because I believed her, because at that moment, she was the only person who hadn't sounded unsure. Behind us, the cabin remained quiet, suspended in that fragile space before fear decides to announce itself. And as I led a 12-year-old toward the cockpit, I made a very deliberate choice. I did not tell anyone else what was happening yet. Then I reached for the cockpit door and knocked, and waited. The cockpit door opened, and the space inside felt smaller than before. Captain Delaney was reclined now, eyes closed, oxygen mask in place. Eli was still upright, but only because he was holding himself there. Dr. Carter moved aside to make room without being asked. The girl stepped forward on her own. "I'm Maya," she said. Not loud, not timid, just clear. I watched the man with the private license glance at her, then at me, then back at the instrument panel. He didn't laugh. That mattered. I didn't speak right away. I let the room do what it was going to do. Maya climbed into the left seat like it belonged to her, adjusted it forward. Feet barely reached the pedals, so she slid them back and tested the pressure with her heels. Then she rested her hands on the yoke, not gripping it, just resting. "What's our altitude?" she asked. Eli answered automatically. 34,000. "Heading? 270. She nodded, eyes scanning, not darting, tracking. "The autopilot's holding," she said. "LNAV and altitude hold, airspeed stable." The private pilot exhaled slowly. She knows what she's looking at. I didn't acknowledge that. Instead, I reached for the headset and handed it to Maya. "Air traffic control is going to need to hear from whoever's flying." She took it, adjusted the band, pressed the transmit button with a practiced thumb. "Denver Center, this is Horizon Flight 318, she said. "We have an emergency. Both pilots are medically incapacitated." There was a pause, a long one. Then, "Horizon 318, say again." Maya didn't rush. "I'm a passenger. I have simulator training on the 737. I'm currently at the controls, requesting immediate assistance." Another pause, shorter this time. "Copy that," the controller said. "Professional, careful. Maintain current heading and altitude. Do not disengage autopilot." Maya nodded, even though they couldn't see her. Autopilot remains engaged. That was the first shift, not the plane, the room. Everyone in that cockpit stopped trying to decide if this was possible and started deciding how to make it work. Dr. Carter leaned toward me. "She's unusually composed." "She's focused," I said. "That's different." I stepped out into the cabin and closed the door behind me again. The atmosphere had changed. People could feel it now. Conversations had stopped. Heads were lifted. That low murmur you get before turbulence, but steadier. A man near the front asked, "Are we okay?" I met his eyes. "Yes," I said. We're being assisted. Not a lie. Not the whole truth. I walked the aisle once, slow and deliberate. Hands visible, shoulders relaxed. The way you move when you want people to mirror you. Then I returned to the forward galley and picked up the emergency checklist binder. The thick one we almost never open. Step 1 was already clear. Contain information, maintain order. Step 2 would come next. Inside the cockpit, Maya was answering questions now. Altitude, fuel remaining, system status. She answered cleanly. No filler. Then her voice dropped, just a little. My mom, she said into the mic, then stopped. I watched her jaw tighten. She inhaled once, slow, and continued. I need to know how long we have. The controller answered with numbers, distances, options. I leaned against the galley counter and listened through the open crack of the door. I wasn't thinking about fear. I was thinking about process. Because at some point soon, the passengers were going to need more than reassurance. They were going to need structure. And when that moment came, I would need to be ready. I opened the binder and turned to the next section. Then I waited. Once you commit to order, you stop reacting to noise. You start working in steps. I kept the binder open on the counter but didn't read it line by line. I already knew what mattered. The checklist isn't there to tell you what to think. It's there to keep you from skipping something when your mind wants to rush. Step 1 was already underway. The aircraft was stable, autopilot engaged. Air traffic control had taken over the big picture. Step 2 was the cabin. I picked up the interphone and called Jenna in the aft. Keep everyone seated, I said. No speculation, no side conversations. Understood, she replied. Her voice was solid. That helped. Then I called Luis in the mid-cabin. Same instructions. Calm tone. Visible presence. When I made the PA announcement, I kept it short. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are coordinating with air traffic control and medical support. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We'll update you as needed. No age, no details, no drama. I put the handset down and let the silence do some of the work. Inside the cockpit, the tone had shifted again. The questions coming from ATC were more precise now. Descent planning, alternate airports, weather windows. Maya listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, it was brief. Yes. Confirmed. Stand by. At one point, the controller asked her to read back a setting. She repeated it perfectly. The private pilot, his name was Aaron, stood behind her, hands folded, saying nothing. He wasn't pretending anymore. He was assisting by staying out of the way. Dr. Carter adjusted the IV lines and glanced at me. They're stable, she said, but they're out. I looked at Captain Delaney, then at Eli. Both unconscious now. Faces relaxed in that way that tells you they're no longer fighting it. That door had closed. I leaned closer to Maya, keeping my voice low. How are you doing? She didn't look away from the instruments. Okay, she said. Then, after a beat, I'm focusing. That was enough. ATC came back on. Horizon 318, we're routing you to Denver International. Longest runway. Emergency services standing by. You'll begin descent in 10 minutes. Maya acknowledged. Then she hesitated. Can you patch my mom through? She asked. Not emotional, just direct. There was a pause. Then a new voice came on the line. Familiar in tone, even to me. Calm. Grounded. Maya, the voice said. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. That was all. I'm here, her mother said. I see you on the scope. Maya blinked once. Okay. They didn't talk about fear. They talked about numbers, altitude targets, speed, timing. I stood just behind the seat, hands clasped, and listened. Behind the cockpit door, the cabin stayed quiet. Not peaceful, but contained. The difference matters. 10 minutes later, Maya reached for the autopilot disconnect. She looked at her mother on the radio. Hands on, she said. That's right. her mother replied. You're in control when you're ready. Maya pressed the button. The soft chime sounded. The autopilot disengaged. The plane didn't lurch. It didn't drop. It simply transferred responsibility. Maya adjusted the yoke slightly, barely perceptible. Good, her mother said. Just like that. I felt the aircraft begin its descent, smooth, controlled. I reached for the interphone again. Cabin crew, prepare for descent procedures. Copy, came back one by one. I moved through the aisle once more, making eye contact, offering quiet reassurance without words. People watched me closely now. They were reading my posture, my pace. So I kept both steady. When I returned to the front, Maya was already managing speed. Her foot tapped lightly against the pedal, testing pressure. Her mother's voice stayed even. Next step, she said, one thing at a time. And that's when I realized something important. We weren't improvising anymore. We were executing. I secured myself in the forward jump seat and placed my hands flat on my knees. Then I waited. Descent changes the feel of a plane. You hear it before you really sense it. The engines adjust. The airframe settles into a different rhythm. People shift in their seats without knowing why. That's usually when questions start. A man in the forward section stood despite the seatbelt sign. Late 40s. Loud voice trying to sound controlled. Excuse me, he said, looking straight at me. Who's flying the plane right now? I didn't answer immediately. I walked to him at a normal pace, stopped one row away, gave him my full attention. We are being guided by air traffic control, I said. Please return to your seat. That's not what I asked, he said. His voice cracked at the end. Fear does that. Are the pilots okay? They're receiving medical care, I said. Still true. He looked past me toward the cockpit. Then who's up there? This was the moment. You don't debate reality. You define it. There is someone trained at the controls, I said evenly. And standing up right now is not helping them do their job. A few people were watching now, not panicked yet, but close. Another voice from across the aisle. Is it a kid? I didn't scan for who said it. I kept my eyes on the man in front of me. Yes, I said, calm, flat. She is qualified in the aircraft systems and she is not alone. The cabin reacted in waves, first disbelief, then murmurs, then a sharp intake of collective breath. The man's face went red. That's insane. I nodded once. It's not ideal. That disarmed him more than arguing would have. What's ideal, I continued, is everyone staying seated and quiet so she can focus. He opened his mouth again. I didn't let him speak. If you want to help, I said, sit down. There was a long beat. Then he sat. The rest of the cabin followed. Not because they were convinced, because certainty is contagious when it's calm. I returned to the cockpit door and checked in quietly. Maya was focused, jaw set, eyes steady. Her mother's voice came through the headset. Approach checklist. Maya answered each item. Landing gear, flaps, speed. She missed nothing. At one point, the aircraft drifted slightly left of centerline. Just a little. Correct, her mother said. Maya adjusted. The nose realigned. Good, her mother said again. No praise, just confirmation. That's how you keep someone steady. We were low enough now that the ground was visible through the front windows. Gray runway. Emergency vehicles lined up like still shapes waiting for instructions. I picked up the interphone. Cabin crew, final approach. Brace instructions in 60 seconds. Copy, came back from both ends. I took my jump seat and strapped in. The PA announcement followed, clear, measured. Familiar words spoken hundreds of times before, now carrying a different weight. Brace, brace. The plane descended. 10 seconds stretched longer than minutes sometimes. Maya's hands tightened on the yoke, not shaking, firm. Idle, her mother said. Maya pulled the throttles back. The runway rose up fast. There was a moment, brief, sharp, When the aircraft floated, then the wheels made contact. Harder than normal, a bounce, a second contact, then solid ground. Applause didn't come yet. We were still moving fast. "Brakes," her mother said. Maya pressed down, heels straining. The aircraft slowed, but not enough. Aaron moved forward without a word and added his weight to the pedals. That changed everything. The deceleration pressed us into our seats. Runway numbers flashed past. Then finally, the plane stopped. Complete stillness. Engines idling. Nobody spoke. Maya stayed frozen for a second longer than anyone else. Then she exhaled. "I think we're down," she said. I unbuckled and stood. "Yes," I said. "We are." And for the first time since the cockpit call, I let myself believe it. I reached for the interphone. "Cabin crew," I said. "We're stopped." There was a pause on the line. Then Jenna's voice, thick with relief. "Passengers are okay. A lot of crying, some hugging." I closed my eyes briefly. Then I opened them and looked at Maya. She was staring straight ahead, hands still on the controls. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Light, grounding. "You did exactly what you needed to do," I said. She nodded once. Then emergency lights flashed across the cockpit windows, and the door behind us opened. Emergency responders moved with practiced speed, but without panic. That's always the sign things have gone the right way. They took over the cockpit carefully, voices low, hands steady. Captain Delaney and Eli were transferred to stretchers. Dr. Carter gave a quick, efficient report, then stepped back like someone who knew her role was finished. Maya didn't move until her mother appeared at the doorway. She didn't rush her. She didn't say anything dramatic. She just held out her arms. Maya stood, legs unsteady now that the work was done, and walked straight into them. They stayed like that for a moment longer than anyone else in the room needed. No one interrupted. Outside, the cabin had shifted from silence to release. Applause came in waves, uneven, emotional, real, not cheering, relief. I stepped into the aisle and raised one hand, not to stop it, just to settle it. "Please remain seated," I said. "We'll begin deplaning shortly." People listened. Authorities boarded next. Airline operations, airport officials. A man in a dark jacket who didn't introduce himself but took notes while he listened. I answered questions the same way I always do. Chronologically, cleanly. No speculation. Times, calls, procedures followed. What we knew, what we didn't. Maya's mother did the same. The story assembled itself without anyone needing to shape it. Later, much later, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold. The apartment was quiet. My uniform hung neatly on the chair where I'd left it. On the table was that envelope I'd pictured weeks earlier. Federal seal, typed label, my name spelled correctly. Inside were transcripts, flight data, statements, everything aligned. No missing pieces, no accusations, just confirmation. The findings were straightforward. Food contamination, rare, unlikely, addressed. No rules broken, no corners cut. The system had held. Maya received recognition quietly at first. A letter, then a ceremony, then attention she never asked for. When reporters called me, I declined interviews. I had nothing to add. The facts spoke well enough on their own. Months later, I saw Maya again on a different flight. Different city. Same calm presence. Older somehow. Not in years. In posture. She nodded when she saw me. I nodded back. That was enough. I folded the letter back into its envelope, slid it into a drawer, and closed it. Then I washed the cup, dried it, and put it away. Order restored. I still fly the same routes. Early mornings. Familiar terminals. The quiet comfort of repetition. I still wipe down the galley counters the same way. Still count the steps between jump seat and door without thinking about it. Some things don't change just because something extraordinary happened once. Every now and then, though, a situation reminds me of that flight. A nervous solo traveler. A kid clutching a backpack too tightly. A moment when routine feels thin. like paper held up to light. A few months ago, after boarding on a late evening flight, I helped a teenager find her seat. She thanked me, then paused. "My mom says you're supposed to listen carefully on planes," she said, "because sometimes adults need help too." I smiled at that, not because it was profound, because it was practical. That's usually how real responsibility shows up. Quiet, unannounced, already in the room before anyone points it out. After that flight, I went home, changed out of my uniform, and made dinner. Nothing special. Cleaned the counter, set my phone face down, sat for a while in the quiet. Life went on. And that's the part people don't always understand. Order isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It just keeps showing up, one small decision at a time. If this story stayed with you, I'm glad you were here for it. If you'd like to support the channel, you can like the video and subscribe. It helps more than you might think. I'd also love to hear from you. What city are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? 2 more stories will appear next, and they're very different, but they come from the same place. Ordinary days, quiet choices, people doing what needs to be done. Thank you for listening.